All right, so we're going to get into 4.2. Don't worry about the 2.2 there. That's just a typo on Smolt's notes. 4.2. We're going to look at factorial notation today. Okay, so factorial notation is a button on your calculator that does all the work for you. Basically, it's a way of counting so many objects. And what it is it's a formula that looks like this. And with an exclamation mark. It's actually, what that's saying is n factorial. The exclamation mark is known as factorial. And what n factorial does is it takes any number, so like n, and it reduces it by 1 consistently until you get down. You keep subtracting a number enough, eventually you keep taking 1 away, you're going to hit number, you're going to hit 1. And what you do is you multiply all these numbers together. Okay, so you guys should have a factorial button on your calculator. It might look like this, or like that. If you have a TI, a Texas Instrument TI-30X, you have to actually hit the PRB button on your calculator. So this one. And then you'll see an exclamation mark there. Okay, so those are the different buttons that you might have to look for. Typically, though, these buttons here, it might be either their own button or a second function button in amongst the actual number keys themselves, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you look at second function in one of those buttons, you should see it up above. There is where you'll find it. Okay? So your calculator will do all this stuff. So for example, these ones are pretty basic, so like 4 factorial is 4, then you're just taking 1 away from it. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, right? You're just reducing the number by 1 every time until you hit 1, and then you multiply them all together. So that's 24. 3 factorials is 3 times 2 times 1, 6. 2 factorial is 2. 1 factorial is 1. And a fun fact, just for you guys to know, 0 factorial is also 1. Try some bigger ones on your calculator right now just to see if you can get it to work. Like try 9 factorial. You can go 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 1. Or you could just go 9, hit the factorial button on the calculator, and you're going to get 362,808. Okay? So you can see, once again, larger numbers. This simplifies the math on doing it. This is what counting is, right? This is what we did in 4.1, what we're doing in 4.2 as well. All right, so you can just do simple stuff like that, or, of course, we can make it a little trickier and do something like 7 factorial over 4 factorial. Now, you could do that in your calculator and get, you punch them in 7 factorial. Divided by 4 factorial, and you get 210. Your calculator will do that for you. I'm going to show you how the math actually works on this, just so you can see it, because later on we're going to be using variables, so like solving for n or x, and you'll need to know how to do the algebra here. So the math on this looks like this. 7 factorial, 7 times 6 is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All over 4 factorial. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So what you have here are these numbers divided by these numbers. And just like with any kind of fraction or division, what you have on the top that's the same on the bottom, you can cancel out. 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. So now all you're left with is 7 times 6 times 5. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 times 7 is 210. So that's another way of doing it. Okay? So let's try that again with a couple of these examples. So I'm going to write them all out so you can see everything that I'm doing. 9 factorial on top is multiplying that by 3 factorial. Okay, so look at 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have that both on the top and the bottom, so I can cancel all this out completely and all this out completely. So now all I'm left with is 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6, over 12 times 11 times 10. So that's 111, or 110, sorry, times 12. $13.20. I can simplify that to 1 over 220. All right, so let's try the next one here. Now, if you want, you can start to simplify things a little bit here. I know that 10 factorial is actually 10 times 9 factorial, right? You just keep going down 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I can write it like that. Times 3 factorial. And then 5 factorial, 5 times 4 times 3 factorial, if I don't want to write it all out. So now here's what I got. The 9 factorials cancel out. You can only cancel one thing out once. The 3 factorials here cancel out. I'm just left with 10 over 5 times 4, which is 20. Okay? So pause there if you want to go work through these a little bit and see how they go. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the variable stuff, which works pretty much the same way. So I got 9, or n plus 2 factorial times n minus 1 factorial. So what I do with these is I write a couple out. So remember, you're going to start with your number, which is n plus 2, and then you're just going to reduce it by 1 every time. So n plus 2 take away 1 is just n plus 1. Take away 1 from that, that's just 10. Take away 1 from that, that's just 10 minus 1. And then it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That's going to keep happening until I get to 1. Same thing here. I just have n, and I have n minus 1 factorial. So it's going to be n minus 1. I take away 1 from that, n minus 2. Keep going until I reach number 1. Cool. So now what I can do is I can look at this stuff. Wait, what do I have on top and bottom that's the same? These n's can go. These n minus 1, and all this can go. So now all I'm left with is n plus 2, n plus 1. Now, the textbook, depending, it's either going to leave it like this or it's going to multiply this out using distribution. Okay? So the answer would be n squared plus 3n plus 2. And the same here can be said for this one. If you want, pause it for a second. Try just writing out the denominator, or sorry, the numerator, and seeing what you get. All right, so n plus 2 factorial. Right, just reducing it by 1. That's the first one. Times n plus 1. Now n factorial squared, so that's actually n times n. So I'd have n. Oh, sorry, n factorial. Sorry, that's going to look like this. N factorial times n factorial, right? Whenever you square something, you just multiply it by itself. So the first n would just be this. Times n factorial again, so I'm going to have n So, all right, so let's see what I can cancel out. This is all the same as that. And this is all the same as that. So now what I'm left with is like so. And we'll leave that one there. Don't worry about doing the distribution. You could though, right? We know that, and we know that this part here is just n squared plus 3n plus 2. And I'll multiply that by n plus 1. So it's going to work out to be n cubed plus 3n squared plus n squared plus 2. Then you could just combine your terms. Just going to write it out real small here. Plus 5n plus 2. All right, so there's that one. Now, for this one, we're solving for n. So we got to find out what n equals. All right, we do it the same way that we did before. So we write everything out, top and bottom, just for this part here with n. So n factorial of n minus 1, n minus 2, 1. N minus 2 factorial is going to be n minus 2, n minus 3, all the way to 1. So now these are all going to be the same. So I can cancel out all that. So now I'm just left with n, and n minus 1 equals 42. Then I can solve for n. Distribution. 42. So this is a quadratic, so I have to bring 42 over to the other side. So it's going to be n squared minus n minus 42 equals 0. Now I need to solve it, so I'll factor this one. You could use the quadratic equation. It's up to you. Factors of 42 that add up to -1 would be 7 and 6. So n is either going to be 7 or n. Now, I know my answer for this would be 7. And the reason for that, I never really explained it up here, is that you can't have a negative, you can't take the a factorial of a negative number. All right, you can't do that. It doesn't exist. So if I have an answer here that says n is negative, can't be this one. So it has to be that one. It is possible to get two answers though. If you had like a 7 and an 8, then yeah, okay, cool, you got me. But otherwise, stick to this. All right, cool. So that's 4.2 in a nutshell. That's your factor notation. So for you guys on page 244, 5, 10, 8, and then do 10.